Hello students, welcome to Ask Prep. My name is Sakshi and today we are going to start with chapter 2, biological classification of class 11. I hope the previous chapters, whatever we have done so far, are very much clear to you, right? So in this chapter, we will talk about the classification of the kingdoms that we have studied in the previous chapter and about the other kingdoms also that exist besides the plant and the animals, right? So here are the few, these are the introductory points which are mentioned here on the screen. So in case of any doubts and queries, please reach out to us through the comment sections, right? Okay, so biological classification is the categorization of an individual on the basis of its characteristics. Like if a few individuals or the few organisms, they show specific characteristic, so they have been put together in the same category. Let's take an example of birds, right? So most of the birds, they have wings, they can fly, they lay eggs, right? These are the characteristics. That is why they have put in one group. Okay. So if we talk about mammals, so most of the mammals, they have body hair, they give give birth to their young ones. The younger ones, they feed on mother's milk, right? So these are the characteristics. So on basis of these characteristics, all the animals, they are classified and put in different groups, right? We discussed in the previous chapter also, right? Now, who started it, the classification? So the scientist, Greek scientist Aristotle, he was the first one to classify living beings. अब जब भी क्लासिफिकेशन कर रहे हैं किसी चीज के, इट हैज टू बी ऑन द बेसिस ऑफ समथिंग, ठीक है, कुछ तो कॉमन होना चाहिए. सो इनिशियली ही टुक द क्लासिफिकेशन ऑन द बेसिस ऑफ हैबिटेट, right? So for case of animals, he took the air dwellers, land dwellers, and water dwellers. So those animals that live in air, उनको एक कैटेगरी में डाल दिया. Those who live in land, उनको एक कैटेगरी में, और वाटर वालों को एक कैटेगरी में डाल दिया. But is it working? Did it work? No, it did not. Right? On the same way, he categorized the plants also. जिनकी soft stem थी, वो उनको हर्ब्स कह दिया. जिनकी थोड़ी सी हार्ड और वुडी स्टेम थी, उनको श्रब्स की कैटेगरी में डाला. और जिनकी सॉलिड बिग गर्थ वाली वो ट्रंक थी, उनको ट्रीज की कैटेगरी में डाल दिया था, राइट? सो देन his obviously the Aristotle's theory did not work because there are a lot of animals. We know that there are reptiles also that live on the land. There are mammals also that live on the land, right? And there are a couple of amphibians also, since they live on both water and land, and water animals के साथ उनको mix कर दिया था. Then land animals में mammals और reptiles दोनों आ रहे थे, since they were showing the different characteristics. So there were a lot of limitations in this theory. So then after that, Carlos Linnaeus proposed a two kingdom classification. ठीक है, उन्होंने classify किया कि majority में there are two kingdoms. One is plant and one is animal. So Plantae kingdom and Animalia kingdom. इसका basis क्या था? It was on the basis of mobility and the preparation of their own food, right? So plants में उनको डाल दिया those organisms that were not mobile, right? That could not move from one place to another and also prepare their own food, right? So Animalia kingdom में वो डाल दिए that could locomote from one place to another, and they were able to feed on the other organisms for their food intake, right? But again, there were a lot of limitations in this theory as well. So there was no distinction between eukaryotes and prokaryotes. I hope we remember from the previous chapter what are eukaryotes and prokaryotes. I told you in the previous chapter also, karyote words जहां पर भी आएगा, that means nucleus, right? Pro का मतलब था primitive nucleus. So these organisms had primitive nucleus, and these ones, you means the real, the true. So true nucleus was shown by the eukaryotic animals. We have studied this is in the previous chapter, right? So there was no distinction between eukaryotic organisms and prokaryotic organisms. Unicellular, multicellular की कोई बात ही नहीं की, because mobility, immobility की तो उसमें कुछ बात ही नहीं होती है. They can be autotrophic, they can be heterotrophic, right? सो फोटोसिंथेटिक एंड नॉन फोटोसिंथेटिक के बारे में कुछ क्लैरिटी नहीं थी. सो मेनी ऑर्गेनिज्म बिलोंग टू दीज टू किंगडम्स विच आर बैक्टीरिया, फंगाई, वायरसेस. They were not placed anywhere, right? Because they don't fall in the completely plant or completely animal. They don't show complete plant or complete animal characteristics, right? So that is why there were a lot of limitations in this theory as well. So after that, Whittaker's classification of life form came into action. Robert Victor, on the basis of he based his classification on these categories. So number one was the cell structure. कैसा cell है? क्या ये unicellular, multicellular है? Eukaryotic, prokaryotic है? Then the body organization in a sense कि कितने अगर cell organelles present हैं तो उसके हिसाब से कैसे how is the body functioning accordingly, right? So the modes and source of nutrition. So this portion covered the photosynthetic, non-photosynthetic, chemosynthetic, and so on. The various types of source of nutrition was also discussed in this one, right? So hence this was worldwide accepted theory, and he classified broadly all the organisms into these 5 categories: Monera, Protista, fungi, plantae, and animalia, right? So in this chapter, we will categorically speak about the first 3. For plantae and animalia, we have other chapters, so we'll talk about that later, right? So this is about the 5 kingdom classification. This is a very, very important question that comes in the paper as well. That who proposed the 5 kingdom classification and which year? So in the year 1969, R.H. Whittaker was a scientist who proposed this theory, and which was accepted worldwide, that yes, because the basis of his classification was very much acceptable, and it covered a wide variety of organisms. So as we talked about this in the previous chapter, the kingdom classification was further divided into these taxonomical units, that is phylum in case of animals, and division in case of plants, right? Class, order, family, genus, and species. From gross, generally speaking, to specific, all the organisms have been put under these classifications, right? So this is what, and we are going to start about the first 3 kingdoms in this chapter. We are going to talk about the first 3 kingdoms. So first of all, we are going to start with the Monera. As we can see it from this diagram, that the initial one, the first one, the Monera, they are the unicellular prokaryotes, means the very primitive organism and very small organisms we will be talking about in this Monera. And then in Protista, there will be unicellular eukaryotes. That means the nucleus has started to getting its shape, right? And then from fungi to plantae and animalia, these are the multicellular eukaryotic organism. So that means from very, very smaller to the advanced level of organisms that we are going to study in this chapter, right? Okay, so now the characteristics of Monera. Monera are the oldest life form of prokaryotes. Prokaryotes हमने पहले भी पढ़ा है ना. तो उसमें क्या, what we have discussed was that the nucleus is not very well defined, right? No defined cell organelles or no defined nucleus is present, right? These are very primitive organisms, probably the first ones to ever exist on the earth, right? They are unicellular, made up of only one cell. A few are autotrophic, but the rest are heterotrophic. So a few, they can make their own food, but when it comes to other, they are dependent on others as well. They get their nutrition from the various heterotrophic modes. Like autotrophism, we know photosynthesis, that means preparing their own food in the presence of sunlight. Photo ka matlab hai light, synthesis ka matlab hai preparation, right? So when they prepare their own food in the presence of light, and chemosynthetic means in the presence of certain chemicals. So in the presence of chemicals, they synthesize their own food. Chemo is the word derived from chemical, and synthesis means preparation, right? So heterotrophic hai jaise ki parasitic. You don't know what is parasitic organism? The parasites are one who takes their nutrition from the other living organism by living on them. So the organism from which they take their nutrition is called the host, and these cells are called the parasites, right? So saprophytics are those which take their nutrition from dead and decaying matter. So that is a major difference between these two. Parasites live on the living organism, whereas saprophytes get their nutrition from dead and decaying matter, right? So now they appear in size, various shapes and sizes are present, right? Achha, the most interesting part of this is that they inhabit soil, water, radioactive waste, and deep portions of Earth's crust, deep oceans, hot springs, snow, and desert. That means every possible place, right? So they can exist in every possible place on the Earth, right? So they live in plant and animal bodies, जैसे कि हमने पहले देखा during the parasitics. This is called the symbiosis. Symbiotic relationship matlab mutual benefit, right? The organism A is living on organism B, and both are getting benefit from each other, right? So that is a symbiotic relationship. So there is a mutual benefit between these two, right? Now, depending on the shape, कितनी अलग-अलग shape के भी होते हैं. These are, the first one is the coccus, the spherical one. Here we can see it in the diagram. This one, the spherical ones, right? Like the example is streptococcus group, right? Bacillus are the cylindrical shape, the first one right over here. We can see it. These are the cylindrical shape. Vibrium are the comma shaped. Comma हमें पता है क्या होता है, right? So they shape like a comma. And this group, so Vibrium is the comma shape, and Vibrio vulnificus is the example of this, right? Spirillum means the spiral shaped, this one right over here, which we can see, right? Spirochetes, they fall under this category, right? So we can say that Monera, despite being able to survive at all the varied places, it also is available with the different shapes as well, right? So these are the different type of shapes in which they are available, right? Here are a few examples of these bacteria that we are going to talk about now. Okay, some of the bacteria that fall under this category are Archaebacteria, Eubacteria, Mycoplasma, Cyanobacteria, and E. coli. So we'll be talking about all this one by one, right? Starting with the Archaebacteria, right? So Archaebacteria are the most ancient bacteria. सबसे primitive हैं ये. They have a rigid cell wall, right? So rigid cell wall की वजह से क्या होता है कि इतनी rigid cell wall है, that is why it can survive in the extreme habitats, be it icy cold, be it radioactive, be it extremely hot deserts, be it the trenches also, anywhere they can survive because of this extreme, this rigid cell wall that they have, right? They have high salt concentration. This high salt concentration से क्या होता है? Whatever it protects the cell from getting damaged from the outside environment. It can survive in the high temperatures, oxygen-free and marshy areas as well, right? So these are the very important points that need to be understood from the category Archaebacteria. Now, किस type के हैं? So bacteria that are present in the extremely high salt concentration, they are halophiles, halobacteria, Dunalalia salina, right? So high temperature में जो present है, they are thermophiles. Okay, so wherever this word philes come, it means loving, right? Thermo is a word coming from temperature, right? So from here the name is derived that the thermo means temperature and philes means love. So they have a love towards the temperature, high temperature. So the oxygen-free marshy areas which are present in, they are the methanogens, and these are the varieties which are present over here in the marshy areas, right? So high temperature वाला हमें समझ आ गया है, high salt concentration वाला पता लग गया है, right? So these are the different types of archaebacteria that present in the extreme conditions. So now the nutrition, what kind of nutrition do these archaebacteria show? So a few of them, they show autotrophism, rest of them, they have the heterotrophism as well as chemotrophism also has been seen in the archaebacteria, right? So these are the different type of nutrition that they show, and these are the characteristics of archaebacteria, right? So number one, the points we need to remember is number one, they have a rigid cell wall. They are present in extreme conditions, even if it is a high concentration of salt, high temperature, or the marshy areas. इनको high salt concentration वालों को halophiles बोलते हैं, high temperature वालों को thermophiles, and marshy areas में since methane is present, तो इनको methanogens कहा जाता है, right? So the other varieties are also here. While it comes to the nutrition, the archaebacteria, they show autotrophic mode of nutrition, heterotrophic, as well as chemotrophic mode of nutrition, right? So they exhibit variety of mode of nutrition as well. Since they are present in such the extreme condition, कोई कहीं पे present है, कोई कहीं पे present है, so that is why they similar type of nutrition to be shown by them is not possible, right? अब आप खुद सोचिए कोई ट्रेंचेस में प्रेजेंट है जहां तक लाइट नहीं पहुंचती है, तो वहां पर ऑटोट्रोफिज्म कैसे काम करेगा? नहीं करेगा, right? So in those cases, they show the heterotrophic nutrition, or depending on the situation, they undergo the chemotrophic nutrition as well, right? So I hope this archaebacteria part is very much clear to you. Now we'll switch on to the eubacteria, the second part that the second type of Monera that we are going to discuss now. Now हमने पहले यूकैरियोट्स पढ़ा था. यू का मतलब हमने वहां पढ़ा था ट्रू, राइट? So the cells that had true bacteria, true nucleus, right? So when it comes to eubacteria का मतलब क्या है कि यहाँ पर true bacteria, they are also called the true bacteria. They also have the rigid cell wall. Flagellum is present, like this one, as we discussed in the previous chapter. Flagellum क्या करता है? It helps in the locomotion, right? इसका locomotion में काम आता है. अच्छा, हैबिटेट्स इनके भी वाइड हैं. They have a huge variety of habitat even in the human body, right? So we know there are a whole lot of bacteria which are present inside our body also. So that means eubacteria are also present inside our body, right? So many occupies the moist habitat. Moist habitat, वही marshy areas, yeah, in the presence of extreme moisture. Okay, about the nutrition. अब nutrition इनका भी variety of nutrition they show, right? So photosynthetic हैं, autotrophs हैं, like the cyanobacteria or the blue-green algae जिसे हमें कहते हैं, right? Photosynthetic का मतलब हमें पता है, they undergo photosynthesis and prepare their own food. That is why they are called the autotrophs, right? So chemosynthetic autotrophs, they prepare their own food with the help of chemical like oxidizing nitrates and ammonia, right? So inki presence mein they prepare their own food, but they are not photosynthetic, right? We discussed that photosynthetic means in the presence of light only, right? But these chemosynthetic autotroph, they are also autotroph, but they need certain chemicals like the nitrates, the ammonia, and the oxidizing agents. So for under which they prepare their own food, right? So they are chemosynthetic autotrophs. right? It helps in cycling nutrition like sulfur, nitrogen, etc. Okay. Now heterotrophs. Hetero का मतलब to getting the nutrition from the other organism. Saprophytes and decomposers, as we have discussed earlier, they feed on the dead and decomposed matter, and parasites that live inside or outside, depending on the organism or the other organism, and derive their nutrients from them, right? So, as I told earlier, saprophytes get it from the dead and decaying matter, whereas the parasite live on the living organism or on or inside. It may be external, it may be internal, right? Now, the common similarities and the differences between the two categories that we have just discussed, eubacteria and archaebacteria में हमने पढ़ा कि they both lack nucleus, right? दोनों के अंदर प्रोकैरियोटिक है, न्यूक्लियस है, cell organelles नहीं है well defined. It is a primitive type of cell. सिंगल सेल है, evolved from the common ancestors. That means these are the first organisms to ever exist on the earth, right? They are the ancestral. Now, categorically specific features about archaebacteria that they live in extreme condition. Cell wall is made up of different matter and they're less standard energy production, right? Whereas we come to the eubacteria, the wall is made up of peptoglycan, right? And they cannot survive in the extreme conditions. So the major difference we can see it here कि archaebacteria कहीं भी present हो सकता है, they can survive in the extreme condition, and whereas the eubacteria, they do not, they have the specific area, they have their favorable conditions under which they survive, right? And the more standard energy production is seen here, whereas it is comparatively less in